All right, guys. I'm going to make this one quick because a lot of people have published their opinion on this. A lot of astrologers, spiritualists have come forth talking about this. So I'm going to make this quick because I'm probably going to say things that you probably have already heard, but I'm going to say it from my perspective. This was a real event, it happened. It's not a conspiracy. If there's anything that this weekend taught me, there's a couple things. One, astrology is real. Like, unequivocally. Like, astrology is 100% real. And at this point, if you continue to deny it, I don't know what to tell you. Now, if you're just flat out ignorant to astrology and you've never been introduced to astrology in this way, you think that astrology and horoscopes is just simply what you read in your local newspaper, and you don't actually go in depth with it. You don't even know what your moon sign is. You don't even know what your Venus sign is. You don't even know what a progression is. You don't know what an intercepted house is. You don't know what a sextile or a trine means. Then I encourage you to book a reading with a astrologer that you trust, whether it's me or somebody else. And also have to take in consideration that astrology also, and this is the other part to it, is that it's not just your birth chart. Taking into consideration the current transits is so freaking important, it cannot be understated how important it is. So many people get caught up on just the birth chart that they don't even consider the transits and how it affects them. Like, I get people all the time say, "Oh, I've got my birth chart done." I'm like, "Okay, do you know what's transiting it? Do you know how those planets are being aspected? Are you looking at this stuff every day or at least every week? Do you follow an astrologer that's looking at these transits that are happening?" I would argue to say that most people don't. So they'll look at their natal chart and then they don't even know what's happening or how it's being aspected. And then they're still getting blindsided by transits that they could at least be prepared for. Now, there's always going to be an element here of, like I said, fate, God throwing the wrench into things. You can't predict everything. But astrology is about seeing patterns, observing these patterns, these celestial patterns, and yes, we can make predictions, but it's really about observing the current energies, and based off of that, you can make a very good, educated guesstimate of the propensity of what could happen, the potentialities. It's about seeing the potentialities. And if you know astrology and you learn about astrology, you study astrology, you're able to see these potentialities more and more, and it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer, right? So, the first thing that this past weekend taught me is that astrology is real. Now, I already knew astrology was real, but this brings it down to the basics. Now, the other thing that this weekend taught me is people don't believe in miracles. And I feel like it's messed up that so many people are so spiritually bankrupt that they can't acknowledge or determine a miracle when it's happening in front of their eyes. That's the other part of this, too. I understand that there's a lot of reasonable doubt surrounding this event. A lot of people calling it conspiracies. It was staged. Hollywood was involved. I think we fail to consider that sometimes human affairs are messy and that they don't always have to be staged. But people are spiritually bankrupt. You don't have to be religious to believe in miracles. And I think that's part of the issue is that people feel like you don't have to be religious to believe in a miracle. But miracles happen every single day. You don't have to be religious to believe in them. But what happened this past weekend was a miracle. It's a miracle that Donald Trump is alive. So, and like I said, there's a lot of reasonable doubt behind this. And some people are not going to like my opinion on this. But this was a real event. It actually happened, and the astrology proves it. Mars was conjunct Uranus on Algol on Trump's midheaven. The midheaven is rules the 10th house. It is the way that you present yourself to the world, your public persona, the way that the world sees you, right? So that's the interesting thing about this, is that a lot of times the way that people see Trump can be quite bullish at times. Taurus is it does talk about your values. It does talk about money, of obviously finances, material things. So people can see Trump as a materialistic capitalist, quite bullish at times. But bulls can also be peaceful in their own right. Anyways, you have Mars, the planet of war, of action, blood, was here with Uranus, which is random events coming out of nowhere, and Uranus also deals with collectives and people, was here on his midheaven. So, of course, he will be giving a rally. He will be giving a speech at a rally. It was exactly square his Mars at 26 degrees of Leo when this all happened, which for him is in his 12th house. Now, the 12th house rules this hidden zone, and especially being that it is Mars, and especially considering the fact that it's Pluto here too, that's in this space. Hidden enemies. And it's a square. I don't know how to break it down any further. Like, it makes sense. A hidden enemy tried to take out and assassinate Trump. Now, why didn't it work? Well, there's a couple things for that. Venus, at 25 degrees of Cancer, where he was in sextile to Mars and Uranus during this time. Now, why is that significant? If you look at Donald Trump's chart, now, his inner ring, this inner ring is Trump. The outer ring is the transit of that day, Saturday, right? You would see that Cancer does not have a house cusp, which means that it is a intercepted house. Intercepted houses, any planet that is there in an intercepted house doesn't really have a home to call its own. It kind of feels out of sorts, and very much so is driven by fate primarily, more so than human will. Let me repeat that. It's driven by fate primarily more than human will. So, Venus in Cancer and Saturn in Cancer in Donald Trump's chart in the 11th house, making a sextile over to this Mars and Uranus. Cancer, of course, rules the home, comfortability, security in many ways, emotions, family. And Venus, of course, is all about relationships too. Saturn, of course, is about the hard work and the growing up aspect. So many people, if there's anything that this event is showing and us, is that this is the reason why people like Trump. Now, you could hate the guy, love the guy, whatever. I think that Trump did some good things. I think he did some not good things. Just come right out and say it. I also think he did, out of the presidents in my life, probably one of the best. Perfect? No. But one of the best. And I am not afraid to say that. So, some of y'all are going to hate me for that, but I don't give a fuck. So, anyways, intercepted house. Now, this is the reason why he's able to connect with a lot of people. This event pretty much proved it. Why? Because even in the face of this danger, of this dude getting his ear shot, this dude was able to raise his fist up in the air and tell people to fight. That's definitely going to connect with people. And it's going to be much more fated because it's Cancer. in the 11th house. Cancer is also emotions. It's the first water sign. And the 11th house does deal with the masses and people. And also broadcasting. That's what the 11th house is. It's also a broadcast that you send out, right? So to broadcast that kind of message exemplifies why people support the guy. Now, I'm also going to be one person to say this, and I've been saying this for a while, is that while Trump does have the support of a lot of very right-leaning people, whatever like that, I don't think that necessarily Trump would necessarily hang out with these people, but that's just my opinion. I feel like a lot of the super right-wing people that support Trump, I don't think Trump would really associate with them, but he knows how to get their vote. I will say that. So, he is a businessman after all. So, I will say that. He knows how to get people's votes. But he also, in this moment, especially being that it's 11th house and it's an intercepted house, it was a fated moment for him to be able to pull on the heartstrings of people, but justifiably so because this dude just got his ear shot. It was a square between Mars and Mars. 12th house, hidden enemies. It failed. It failed. And it failed because it was a miracle. Jupiter with Aldebaran. Aldebaran is in the sign of Gemini. It's the angels. It's the heavens, right? We forget that he's an eclipse baby. We forget that he's an eclipse baby, right? That's the other thing with Trump is that he was born on an eclipse. And people forget about that and how that energy is incredibly powerful and potent. But yes, there was a lot of stuff that was going on here, right? Saturn was in, he has Chiron right now in square to his Saturn and his Venus right now, right? So that's the thing about this outer wheel. If it's the outer transits, Chiron in Aries in the ninth, in his ninth, but that's the outer world, and this is the inner world. So it's like he's looking out in the world, that his world is looking in. So a lot of people with that Chiron in his ninth take issue with his Saturn in the 11th. There's some definite conflict there. Some people who feel like Trump is against them, that feel like Trump represents everything that they are not, and they believe, that's the thing, it's the ninth house of belief, they believe a certain image that is being put out and broadcasted. I think it's interesting how the sun, of course, at this time was on his Saturn and was about to be on his Venus, was in semi-sextile to his sun at 30 degrees. And the sun is where in Cancer, an intercepted house. This was a fated moment that was going to happen, and it shows why people support the guy. It was going to happen, and it is real. Now, I have considered the fact that maybe since, millionaires don't know and use astrology, but billionaires do, that he might have orchestrated this if he knew the astrology. But to get that many people on board or involved, I don't know. I feel like this is honestly a miracle that happened. We just witnessed a miracle, but some people are so deluded into believing that this was actually something that was staged. And I like conspiracies. I don't believe everything I just see. And in fact, it took me a few days to really think over this situation and to digest it. Because when it first happened, I thought it was fucking nuts. And then I thought, okay, maybe this was staged. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, no, this actually did happen and it was a miracle. But so many people are so spiritually bankrupt that they can't acknowledge or see a miracle when it's happening in front of their eyes, even if that miracle is involving someone that they hate. And it's kind of messed up, honestly. the the response to this event is it it kind of almost makes you lose faith in humanity a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, because I, as someone who deals with anxiety and panic attacks, even though I don't have as many panic attacks now, thankfully, but as someone who deals with that stuff, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy because it's a scary place to go. So for people to wish harm on someone, even if they hate the individual, and that hatred is probably more than likely based on a projection by a media that wants them to believe a certain narrative. Let's just be real. The visceral hate for this man is something that I find astounding. I'm not his biggest fan, but the hate that I see for this dude is astounding. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. But I don't I feel like a lot of it, if it wasn't for mass media, it wouldn't even be a thing. I would be just as upset if Biden had gotten shot. Because we don't need this kind of violence in our country, here in the United States. We don't need this kind of violence. And for people to be saying and publishing opinions that, oh my gosh, you had one job and you missed. It's like, that was an act of God that he missed. You know, I know some of you guys don't believe in God, or gods or whatever, but that was an act of God. It was a fated moment. He wasn't supposed to die that day. And the astrology proves it. The astrology proves it. A lot of people aren't going to be happy about that. They're not going to get it. But it is what it is. The astrology proved it. The moon at 24 degrees. I mean, the moon was transiting this spot. So I'm like, yeah, even though this outer ring is for 11:43, and it happened much earlier, but the moon was also opposed Chiron that day. So that's another interesting thing. And I said in my weekly astrology horoscope and every other daily leading up to this that the week was going to get more and more dramatic. I said it was going to get increasingly more dramatic, and I was right. I didn't predict this exactly. I know there are some astrologers that predicted this. I know someone said that he could have been shot. I know, of course, the Leo King said to avoid crowds, which makes sense with Mars on Uranus, on Algol, no less. But yeah, this was a fated event. This was real. It happened. There was a hidden enemy that tried to take him out and failed. Why? Well, you would think that person had this line of sight, if you will, with Mars to Mars. But intercepted Cancer kind of came through. The intercepted house of Cancer, I feel like, is what came through with that 11th house. Because also the 11th house, there is an angelic energy to the 11th house as well that people don't really consider. A lot of people, of course, will associate angels with Gemini and stuff, but really all the air signs have it. So, and with it being Cancer, probably maybe even a past loved one was with them. Maybe like a grandmother with Saturn there too at 23 degrees. Maybe there was like a great grandmother or something like that was with Trump that day. That maybe made him turn his head or something. Wouldn't be surprised. Especially considering the fact that Mars rules the head and dude just happened to turn his head. It was a miracle. We witnessed a miracle. And I know a lot of people are going to refute that and say that this was fake and that it was staged. And if it does come out one day that this was staged, it still proves that the astrology is right. And it still proves that even with human will, there's always an element of fate. Because if it was staged and they just went along with it, it was like, oh, this is what the astrology is going to say, you're still influenced by the planets and the stars. So is it really your free will? Or is there still an element of fate here at play? That's all I got to say about this one. It's going to get more dramatic. You thought that things were going to cool down or calm down? Things are going to get a lot more dramatic. Just wait and see this Leo season, Virgo season, Libra season, Scorpio season. It's about to get more intense. And that's why you should check out my daily content so you can be better prepared to navigate these celestial energies. Whether you're watching me or another astrologer that you trust, I think now is more important than ever to pay attention to the astrology because it will help us to navigate these times. I want humanity to come together and to unify. I don't want to see people fighting. I don't want to see strife. I don't want to see pain. I don't want to see any of this stuff. It's part of this world, but I don't want to see unnecessary bloodshed and pain and suffering. I want us to unite. I want us to come together. I'm still a bit of an optimist, okay? I'm a Sag rising with Mercury in the first, progress Sag Sun, right? I am a bit of an optimist, sometimes to a fault. Sometimes it's a double-edged sword, but ultimately, I am here to radiate love and to connect with those that also want to do the same. And that's all I got to say about this. Y'all take it easy. Peace.